it's time to start a public hearing on ordinance number 2019-10-1, an ordinance to amend the official zoning map of the town of Livingston, Tennessee, as adopted by ordinance and as since amended to change the zoning classification of the Norris property at 7283 Bradford Hicks Drive from C1 local commercial to I2 heavy equipment, or heavy industrial, sorry. Whereas the Municipal Planning Commission of the town of Livingston recommended September 23rd, 2019 meeting to rezone the Randall Norris property cited at 7283 Bradford Hicks Drive, further described as Overton County Tax Map 045J Group A, parcel 002.05 from C1 to I2. So this is a public hearing. Looks like Randall was wanting to speak. Yeah. So then Mr. Norris is here, and I've not had any complaints or no one has talked to me about this. Like I said earlier to the Planning Commission, I believe this is a step closer by using Mr. Norris's property to be able to land this industrial prospect that we have been talking about for the last 60 days. So, is there anyone here that would like to speak to this ordinance? Okay. Is there any board members that would like to speak to it? Mr. Norris, would you like to say anything? Christian, have you had any calls on this or anything?
No.
Okay. Kevin, as we said in the past, this is the time Bill Williams to tell a joke.
Yeah, I know.
Are you ready?
I'm not ready.
Okay, well, we put this in the newspapers, and so everyone's had an opportunity to come and show support or not show support. So, with no objection at all, we will close the public hearing on this, given the fact there's not been anyone that has, I think that we've seen in the past, if there's objections, that it's some folks here maybe. So that'll be on your agendas as an old business second reading ordinance 2019-10-1. John Meadows here. Yeah, Bill's here. You're gonna turn your lights out. Folks, come on in. We've got some seats here if you want to. Okay, that's right. All right, we're gonna close the public hearing and call the meeting to order. If you would, please stand for the prayer. Remain standing for the prayer. Ron?
Lord, we thank you for this day, Father. We thank you for those that come together for this meeting tonight, to be able to serve in this capacity, for the ones that's come out for this meeting. Let us make the decisions according to what you want us to do and what we need to do in the best of our knowledge. And also ask that you remember the military that are on the foreign soil. Remember the upcoming Veterans Day coming later on in the month. Lord, we just thank you and be for the sickness of families that's got sickness. We remember them. Remember us according to, again, we can do what you want us to do. In your will and your honor to serve. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Amen. Chief Dow, will you lead us in the pledge of allegiance, please?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Ron. Thank you, Chief. Roll call, everyone is present. Need approve the minutes of last month's meeting.
So moved.
Motion made by Alderman Dishman. Is there a second? Second by Alderman Langford. Any discussion? All for the motion, let it know by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, like sign. Motion passed. Additions or deletions to the agenda. Myself, I do have two. I have, for item number 9, Charlie Smith is here with the Bar Design Group. And also, Mr. John Meadows has got an ordinance that he wants to pass out. So that'd be items 9 and 10. Is there any other additions or deletions?
I've got one that I'd like to talk about, intersection down here at the end of Belgrade. End of Belgrade, and I guess that's West Main.
Okay.
Talking about striping.
Okay. So item number 11, David, we just do that as Beverly Street. Is that okay?
Yeah, that's fine.
Beverly Street intersection. Yeah, I need a motion to add 9, 10, and 11. please.
So moved.
Motion made by Vice Mayor Ken Dodson,
Second.
second by Rex Dale, Alderman Rex Dale. Any discussion? All for the motion, let it know by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, like sign. Motion passed. We add that 9, 10, and 11 to the agenda. Under old business, item number 1 is the second reading of ordinance 2019-10-1. That is the ordinance that was recommended passing and changing the zoning from C1 to I2. That was recommended by the Livingston Planning Commission. It passed the first reading already. We just completed the public hearing, no objections to it.
Make a motion, we make the change.
Motion made by Alderman Langford. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Second by Alderman Dishman. Any discussion? All for the motion, let it know by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, like sign. Motion passed. Item number 1 under new business as a Census Bureau, Miss Sherry Jackson. I put her on there first. You've got to get the moderator. When I
Each paper over and one of those, and you'd like a Census 2020 e-pin, and here are my business cards. They say Philadelphia, but I live in Cookville. I grew up in Citrus County, and Philadelphia is where our regional office is.
Yeah. You'll push the button right there at your microphone.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, thank you, Miss Jackson.
That got it?
Button.
Yeah.
The big button?
That's it.
Okay. Okay. Every 10 years, the U.S. Census Bureau counts everyone in the U.S., and it's always in the year ending in 0. So 2020 is our next census count, the year 2020. And And we've been counting every 10 years since 1790, and that very first census was taken on horseback by federal marshals. But it's actually Article 1, Section 2 of the Constitution, so you can see it was in the Constitution very early on. And one of the main reasons we count everyone is for to determine how many seats each state gets in the House of Representatives. And currently, Tennessee has 9 seats. And it also determines, you know, legislative districts and everything that are drawn. The 2020 census in your folder, on the right-hand side on the top, there's a little flyer, and if you flip it over to the back, it will tell you about how we invite people to respond this census. This is the very first time that you can respond online or by phone or paper questionnaire. You get your choice. In the past, everything was paper driven. And this is actually my 3rd time working the decennial census. I worked in 2000 and 2010. In 2010, we had an office in Cookville, and everything was paper driven. And you can imagine we got a lot of paper in that office for questionnaires. But you can respond online or by phone. This particular census, mid-March, every address across the U.S. will get an invitation to respond to the census. And if you respond online or by phone, you'll be done with it. If you do not, you'll get a paper questionnaire at home after about 3 or 4 reminders. And if you don't respond in the paper questionnaire, that's when you get a knock on the door. So that we're trying to encourage people to self-respond to the census. Now, why is this important? Why is the census important? There's $675 billion annually, that's annually, and we only get to count every 10 years, that comes back to us, and it's all determined by census data. And I always like to just really drill it down to a child. Let's say you miss a child in kindergarten. They're going to be starting high school the next census. And you will not have any dollars tied to that child, but yet you'll have that child in school for all those years. And we'll be paying, you know, the city and the county will be paying to have that child in school. Our health departments, everything, roads, schools, everything's tied to that census data. And those of you that work government, I know, really understand it. Sometimes I don't think we educate the public enough as to how important the census is. So it's easy this time, 3 ways to respond. It's important, and I just want to make one more point. It's safe to respond to the census. We do not share census data with any other government agency. We don't share with law enforcement. We don't use it to determine government benefits. It's all reported in statistical format only. And that's protected for 72 years. After 72 years, my census data from 2020 will be available. And I probably won't be here, but it will be available. And that's for genealogy purposes, that we have the 72-year limit. Now, one thing that we're asking from our city and our county governments, you are the trusted voices in your community. You're the elected officials. And we know that you have a big influence over your constituents, and you can help them understand how important it is. So we're asking that you partner with us to help get the word out about that it's safe, easy, and important. And we're going to be working through the mayors and our governments to put together complete count committees. We invite anyone that wants to be a part of that, that has some influence in your community. We're drilling down to every level. We're working with health departments, DHS, churches. We want everyone to know how important the census is, because that will determine the funding for 10 years for the city of Livingston and Overton County. And again, you can contact me at that email or the phone number on that card, and I just live basically in Allgood. It's a Cookville address, but I'm just right outside of Allgood. And what questions do you have about the census?
Ms. Jackson, I have just a few. Thank you, first of all, for coming to Livingston. This census is really big for cities and counties, and so I look forward to working with you as we've got a meeting I know coming up at the chamber.
Yes.
Now, however, in the past, as I've been mayor of this last census, I was on the council before that, sometimes everyone didn't call in, and I know this is new about calling in.
Right.
So when the number comes back and you don't agree with the number of the folks that is in your town, is there a deadline that we can have our own special?
There is, and there's a procedure, but you really don't want to go there because it's costly and it's expensive, so the government's paying for it now.
Okay.
They truly know what they're doing. I mean, if you work with us on this, I mean, they start, the minute this census ends, and they start working on 2030.
Yeah, right.
So this is kind of a new program. It's called Partnership Program, where we're trying to partner with all the different entities in your county to help spread that word and get that count.
And we're willing to work with, no question about that. But if the number comes up that we just don't agree with it, for instance, if you say there's 1,700 and we know there's well over 4,000, the procedure for that.
I don't have all the details. That is an operational procedure, and we're partnership, and that is operations. I do know there are procedures. I do know that Gallatin, in the middle of the census, you know, between 2010 and 2020, they took a special census.
Right.
And the Census Bureau, for them to do it, I actually was in Gallatin today, and I think they said it was gonna cost the city 600-something thousand for the census to come back in and do that count again.
Yeah.
So that's why we want to do it right now.
Yeah.
And they actually did it themselves for, I believe they said around 5,000, and they were able to get quite a bit of additional funding. Well, that was not necessarily because the census did it wrong in 2010. It was, they had grown that much in that 5-year period. And they were able to get a lot of funding for the additional, I forget, I think they counted like an additional 5,000 people or something like that.
Right. Yeah. We did a special census as well.
Oh, you did?
Yeah,
Okay.
and we had officers going door to door. So, and this year, I just want to make sure that everyone understands. So, the census is going to be sending folks door to door, especially the ones that have not responded.
Yes,
So,
the ones that haven't responded, yes.
Okay.
They have those 3 opportunities to respond, those 3 different avenues: phone, online, or paper questionnaire. And people can respond according to their lifestyle. We do not mandate how they respond. So they have all 3 of those response rates. And this census, I like the fact that, say someone doesn't get an invitation to respond, they can still call in their census information. All those invitations to respond are geocoded with an address, a geocode on them. And we work with county governments to update the address list.
Okay, I just think it's important, you know, the last time some of our folks just didn't respond. And it is very, like you said, it is very important
Yes.
that everyone is counted to help cities and counties and school systems all alike, because it'll be an additional 10 years. So I guess I'll talk to you a little bit more about it when we have our meeting at the chamber.
Yes.
But, you know, I think there's some, but I think there is a question that I need to know, that in the event that we don't agree with the number that the U.S. Census comes up with, and we want to do our own count, then the procedures of doing that. I hope
Yes,
that don't.
and I cannot give you the answer to that tonight, but I can make sure that we get you that answer.
Sure.
I hope we don't have to go that route. It would be really sad because we're spending, you know, probably millions to do this count. It's estimated that for one paper questionnaire that goes out, it costs $177. You know, so that's one reason we have the different response options this time.
Thank you. Is there any more questions for Ms. Jackson?
Sure, I've got a couple of comments and questions.
Okay.
I know you sent a paper form out in the Collin. One thing, about a month ago, we had a gentleman to come to our door and knock on our door. We didn't recognize him. We started at the door, and he was in a plain white SUV vehicle, and he come and had a clipboard, no identification whatsoever. They said, you know, we just want to make sure who lived there, you know, and many. Of course, we said two. But he said it was Census Bureau. He didn't have no tag, no nothing on the vehicle, no lanyard or nothing.
Yeah.
So I had a close friend that has worked for the Census Bureau, and I called, and she done some research, and he was legit, but yet no identification. One thing I'm thinking for our elderly and even other people that might not come to the door if they come around, that may not fill out the form or do the phone calling, if they don't know who that is, if they don't get somebody, they're not gonna open the door for them.
Right.
That's where I think some of our Miss County has happened. And so maybe there's something to work out if they don't call, you know, answer the phone or don't fill the paperwork out, maybe work out somewhere, I don't know if we've not got enough law enforcement, maybe work it out where somebody could go to these senior apartment complexes and get a head count at those and other places. Just a thought and just an idea, because I support the census no matter what. But I think we need to do a little bit more to be able to get an exact head count per population in the city of Livingston.
Yes. And we are doing a lot of different things. We're setting up what we're calling be-counted centers, and like a lot of senior centers, we're trying to educate them now. We've already, we had a special workshop for all our senior directors in Cookville a couple months ago to talk to them about the census, and they've been educating a lot of the seniors about it and about when it's happening and what to expect. And they can actually, if we set up a be-counted center in a senior center or a library, they can come to that location. We're talking about maybe doing some mobile vans with computers and stuff with a census taker available to go out into some of the communities, like you mentioned, to go out and reach out to those folks. So there's a lot of different things we can do, and that's where the partnership starts, and that's you guys are the ones that have the ideas, that know what to do in Livingston, what works.
Right.
You know better than we do, and that's why we're partnering with you.
Yeah. Thank you, Ms. Jackson. Is there any other questions, Ms. Jackson?
Thank you for your time. If you have any questions or anything, feel free to call or email.
Thank you, Ms. Jackson.
Thank you.
Item number 2, Ray Evans and Greg McDonald, actually, but Ray Evans first on the downtown revitalization. 2 and 3.
So first, a bit of an apology. The mayor had asked that we get our package together on the Wednesday before your meeting on Monday night. Normally that is not a difficult thing to do, but on some rare occasions like this last week, the first Friday occurs before the first Monday. So we actually had Downtown Revitalization Committee meetings Thursday and Friday of last week, and we're still working on some of the package on Friday and through the weekend. Therefore, you received the package, I think, this morning. But I think we'll endeavor to do better in the future and make sure that we've got the package to you well in advance, and so you have it. So let's go over the items. The multimodal access grant from TDOT. We did have a field review with their consultants on Thursday, October the 17th. Spent several hours with them walking the streets and looking at the specifics of the preliminary design. They left with several changes to be made. We're going to, over the next couple of weeks, be meeting with the adjacent property owners to discuss the preliminary design and any, I'll call it effect, but what's going on in front of their property primarily. Hope to do 3 or 4 of those tomorrow, as a matter of fact. The TDOT Transportation Alternatives Program grant, as we said last meeting, we submitted that on October the 3rd. We haven't received any response yet from TDOT, although we didn't necessarily expect to. This grant takes a bit longer to process than some of the others. We've asked the county to place us on the agendas of both the building and the budget committees so we can discuss the grant and the match potentials there. The third item is the Tennessee Department of Economic and Community Development, CBDG Commercial Facade Improvement Grants. As you see, we were not successful in our application this round. There were 6 communities that received awards: Brownsville, Columbia, Gainesboro, Pulaski, Selmer, and Sevierville. And if you would note that 4 of those 6 are Tennessee Main Street communities, and that will be important in a bit of our conversation later. And you see that the total grant amount for this year was $500,000, and in past years it's been as high as $700,000 or $750,000, so it's slightly less this year than it has been in some of the previous years. I'm going to skip number 4 and put it last, if you don't mind. So the Central Park rental properties, we simply keep sliding on the agenda. That hasn't arisen to the priority that we thought it would be during our meetings, but we will have some revisions to propose to you on the rental policies and the fees for those rentals at your December meeting. Our meeting on Thursday was with the staff of the Tennessee Department of Economic and Community Development Main Street Program. We had a good 2-hour meeting with them and discussed where we were in the process, what the advantages of being a Main Street community are, etc. And that was well received by staff. We were well received by staff. They're enthusiastic about helping us move forward. And I think they are sending the Main Street application to the mayor within the next week or so, and we'll get that process started. Once we get that application, we will come back to you and sort of give you a chronology of what happens next and what the process is to move forward. Last
Mr.
item.
Evans, may I interrupt you real
Yes,
quick
sir.
and ask a quick question? Do you mind just highlighting a few of the benefits or advantages to becoming a Main Street community? 'Cause I'm not aware.
So one of those is, if you go back up to number 3, one of those is that you get additional points in these grant applications if you are a Main Street community. And sometimes just those 5 additional points or 10 additional points makes a difference as to whether or not you're successful with your grant or not. Being part of the program and getting your community involved, in every community in the state that's done this, they've seen substantial improvements to the look of their communities, to the well-being of the communities, to the revenues that are coming into the city, and to the private investments that are being made in the communities. And so that's probably as much a reason as any. It just helps you really push your community forward and make it more successful.
Okay, does ECD still have the requirement, the way someone explained it to me some time ago, that you must have a full-time employee on staff at your city municipality level that is simply hired to operate the Main Street downtown program?
The Main Street program requires that you have an executive director for that program, but it does not have to be a full-time person. So back to
Ray, I have a question on that real quick. The Main Street, so now, is Monterey City Main Street, you know, by chance?
I don't think so.
Julie Bohannon, is it at the depot and things, so she's not, okay, she's just a part, okay. Thank you.
So last meeting, we presented to you a budget for the use of the state shared sales tax revenues.
Mr. Evans, I'm sorry to interrupt, but I have one more quick question on the items that you have already covered.
Sure.
On item number 3, does ECD provide any feedback to your committee as it relates to why Livingston would not have been chosen, or is it just private and they don't give you any response?
The latter is they may tell you a few things about why a community did well, but they won't tell you where you ranked in the process or why your particular community was unsuccessful. And that's typical with most grants.
And is that an annual, do they do that every year?
Yes, sir.
So there's no restrictions on who can apply every year, or who, we can apply next year, the year after, right?
We actually spent probably 45 minutes of the 2 hours with the staff, getting them to sort of coach us as to how we could enhance our prospects for next year.
Okay, thank you, sir.
Ray, I do have one more question. I seen Brown's for $50,000, popped in my head. The $50,000 grant that was got and awarded to the Technology Center. Is that not under one of these categories, or is that separate?
No, sir.
It's a separate one?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
And not one that the revitalization committee had any.
Thank you.
One more quick question. Were there any material changes following your visit with the, down with the Main Street, the multimodal access grant? Were there any material changes to the design that you presented to us months ago following that visit that y'all had on site this week?
I would call it, I would categorize it as numerous tweaks, but no material changes. It's still the same sidewalks, et cetera, how we approach this one. Maybe instead of doing X, we're doing Y instead, but it's still the same sidewalks and same equipment.
Thank you.
Okay, any other questions? All right, last comment. We continue to work on this budget after we presented it to you last week, and I want to share a couple of things with you that you'll note, and I'll have Greg come up and talk about item number 3 here shortly. But if you'll note, priority number 7 and priority number 8, the security fence behind the Rotary Main Street stage, I think we had $10,000 or so in there before. After the meeting, Chief Etheridge let us know that there was fencing left over from the Central Park project that he has very craftily stored up at his fire training facility. And so he and I went up there last Friday morning and looked at that. And it appears that we have enough material to do whatever we want to from an additional security standpoint. There may be a post or two that we don't have, but we certainly have enough fencing and type of fencing that we think that we can do that. So that's why you see that item now we're calling 0. The courthouse square Christmas tree, the chamber has stepped up and made that purchase. That was a $2,500 or $2,800 item that is now off the budget, that has been taken care of. And so we then just took everything that was left over, which was $18,812, and put it in sort of what I'm going to call a catch-all category of advanced grant matches and contingencies. And I think the contingency part is important because, for instance, up in number 4, this safety rail replacement along North Church Street, $20,000. That's just an educated guess. That number could be $18,000 or it could be $25,000. So we needed the source to make sure that we could whatever that bid comes in, that we could take care of that. Mr. Arnold Proctor has taken on the task of seeing that our clock gets repaired, and I think Arnold, I think this week sometime you guys are going to take a look at the clock. There's some that believe the clock has never worked. I don't have any basis for that, but although it is correct two times a day. So
I said it there the other day to try to catch that. You were back and I didn't catch it, but you're probably correct.
Mr. Evans, is there a design developed for number 4?
There is a design developed, and it was actually developed as part of our previous transportation alternatives program when we put the same rail down Spring Street. So we'll be using that same rail detail on this project. So we won't have to spend any engineering design fees. We're just gonna reuse what we'd already paid for.
Okay, so at this point, you haven't received any estimates from anybody?
No, sir.
Okay.
So I guess what we would, let Greg come up and speak to the chamber and how they have been using their funds, but then after Greg speaks, I would ask for a motion to approve the budget as proposed tonight.
Thank you, Ray. Mr. Dishman, in response to your question, I do want to answer that regarding the TCAT $50,000 grant that we got this year. That's part of the chamber program. It's called 3-Star. And we're allowed and we're enabled, and it's a competitive grant every year. And we received it this year for TCAT, and Mr. Winningham's here. The previous year, we got the $50,000, and we used that for Chromebooks throughout our school. So the 3-Star is a very complicated process. We work on it all year, and we will continue to work on it the next year, each year, because it does give us additional benefits, which really do coincide with the downtown, because it enables us to enhance our CDBG grants, as well as get an additional 4% of all of our grants that the city and the county apply for. So it all goes hand in hand. And as Mayor Hayes has said many times, the stars start lining up, and the one did not line up this time that we anticipated we'd receive was the downtown grant. But I think Mr. Evans explained it very well, is that if we become a Main Street program, which I'll talk about here in our budget, it's going to put us in another class. This past year, we applied from downtown, and now we've gone from a 3-Star to a downtown, and the next logical step is Main Street. And that is part of our budget every year, so that the chamber director, the mayor, and whomever else, Ray, of course, would attend the Main Street Conference, which is a little expensive, but we could put that into our budget and our funds. So that would answer that question for you, sir. I do want to just touch real quick on the Christmas parade. Although it is the 54th annual Open Economy Christmas parade, the Chamber of Commerce is very involved in the Christmas parade as well as every other activity. The following was a major success this year. I want to recognize Shannon and her team for her efforts. We were in a bit of a disarray, and everything came out great. And thank everybody here for the support. But the parade is December 14th. I think you all know. It's going to be on the same route, except this year, of course, you know the nursing home is under construction, so we probably won't be able to entertain the seniors. So it'll just dissipate as it hits the nursing home area. The theme this year is a hometown Christmas. We thought that would be very appropriate. The Christmas Parade Committee, which any of you or anybody here is certainly welcome to join. We thought that would be very appropriate for all the things that we've done on our downtown community. I had some people in today just coming in and wanted to know what to do. Just come downtown, walk around. And we receive that a lot. We should be very proud of our downtown. Sign-ups begin this Wednesday. I thought they signed up today, and I had people waiting. I was mistaken. They start Wednesday, so we anticipate another good year of sign-ups. And somebody did ask me today, is the weather going to be this year? And I said, well, I'm going to leave that up to the mayor this year.
Thank you.
But I want to tell you a little bit about the grant. Several years ago, back in about 2007, 2008, there was an opportunity within the state of Tennessee, and I think some of you that have been around for a while have heard me talk about this, but there was a competitive grant that at the time, John Roberts was the director of the Chamber of Commerce, is very well known throughout the infrastructure and relationships within the state of Tennessee, and found out this opportunity, this grant that was going to become available. And it was going to be a very, very, very competitive grant, and it was a downtown revenue program, which was the 5 cents on every 7 cents of sales tax, which we've talked about for several years, and that's what obviously helped build the park. And so 35 cities applied for that, and 6 cities received it. And I didn't bring the list off the top of my head. I should know because we meet with them every year to kind of discuss strategies. What have you done? What have we done? Are we doing the right things? And we have found out that we've nailed it as far as reinvesting in the right things within our downtown area. And so 35 cities applied, 6 were selected, we were one of 6. Well, I want to take just back a step, and some of you may already know this. I know Mr. Langford has probably heard this before. The grants are competitive, and the benefits of writing a grant is there's return on your investment. There's an advantage to obtaining the grant. That's how the grant writers make their money. That's how the Upper Cumberland Development District makes their money. It's how private grant writers make their revenues. And so John Roberts had a vision, he had foresight that this grant, who knows more about our community than our community? And he was spot on. So the community, led by Rita Reagan Underhill, and a team that she had developed at the time, wrote the grant, and we got the grant. And that would end up being obviously a very big deal, because without that grant, that park would not be there today. And so part of that grant was a return on the investment for being the grant writer. Now I can tell you at the time, UCDD, which was led by a person by the name of Wendy Askin, wanted that grant because she recognized it had a good return and it had a good long-term return on it. And Mr. Roberts also recognized that the Chamber of Commerce kind of runs on a month-to-month basis, so to speak, with the help of certainly the city and the city council and the county commissioners, as well as its private a membership that pay dues, and I'm going to talk about the dues here in just 1 second. But good return on investment we got, but Wendy did not like that. But John said, we know our community better than you do. And we wrote it, and out of 35 cities that applied, 6 received it. And of course, we got an extension on it in 2013. And at that point in time, there's been a lot of work done, led by the late great Bud Bishop and his direction of the committee, which I then interceded and Mr. Evans has taken over. And we've continued to move on. And we've had the good fortune to be able to have another extension on that grant. So the investment was good. We wrote the grant as a community, and it's been a sound investment for us. And so each year we do receive that grant, but I do want to talk about the benefits that Mr. Roberts saw way back in 2007, 2008. You know, you keep going to the well, and you want to receive more funds and funding. The Chamber's changed, ladies and gentlemen, over the last 15 years. It's gotten bigger, it's gotten stronger. We've added more services. We've done a lot of things to this community, and I think we've been a big part. I think the Chamber has been a big part of the success of the city and the county. Working together, government's working together. There's communities within this Upper Cumberland that don't work together, and we work together, and that's very critical. But we have not touched the membership dues in over 15 years. 15 years, and we're doing an analysis right now, and we think it's going to come back and show that we are the lowest as far as membership dues to our small businesses, individuals that are chamber members, and I know there's some chamber members sitting here in the room tonight, and we've purposely been able to keep the chamber membership dues extremely low because we have some additional funding. And I'll tell you this, if we go out tomorrow and find 3 or 4 more return on investments that we can get to help subsidize the Chamber of Commerce, we would do that. Because that's what the UCDD does. That's why you hire private grant writers. So some of the things that we do, again, we want to continue to look into the future, which I'll talk about just briefly. But we want to keep certainly our membership dues down. Will we have to make some adjustments someday? Yes, it's probably inevitable. It's like, I know nobody out here likes to hear we got to raise taxes, but it's inevitable. Things are going to change down the road. So it's inevitable, probably we'll have to do some adjustment in our membership dues down the road. But some of the things we do support, Mr. Evans did present the Christmas tree. That's been kind of we've always had a great donation of the Christmas tree every year, but we've been looking at what Dalton Park does, and so we have bought a tree very similar, not in size, but similar from a standpoint of the quality of the tree. This one will be 15 foot, and I believe it was delivered today, and that's coming out of this amount of money I'm talking about now is things that we fund each year, or we budget for in case we can't get a sponsor. So the tree is a new expense that we're putting under that was put under those monies. Quarterly board luncheons, we got away a little bit from our having quarterly luncheons because everything, again, we have to come to the public and say, will you sponsor this? Mr. Speck, will you sponsor that? Mr. Coleman, will you sponsor this? And you get tired of asking and asking. So if we can fund it ourselves, we've been putting that in our budget. Do we still try to get sponsors? Yes. The movies in the park, we continue to budget for that. Again, we try to get sponsors, and we obviously ask the community and rely on the community for help, but we budget for it. The year-end awards, we started doing something different at our year-end awards. Again, all this stuff is little stuff, but it adds up to big stuff. And we started recognizing businesses that were 20, 25, 30, 35, and so on. E.B. Gray has been the one that tops it all at 100 years, and we do it on 5-year increments after 20 years. So these are some of the things that go into the budget. The Halloween, we had some great sponsors this year, no question about it, but there's still a lot of marketing that goes into that. We try to get sponsors for that. So everything goes into a budget that's been able to us to grow some of the opportunities that we have in our community. And the net effect of that has been, if you look at our sales tax continues to lead the way in the Upper Cumberland from a standpoint of percent of improvement on a monthly and quarterly and annual basis. Other things that we certainly sponsor out of this budget is the Main Street Conference that any of you are certainly welcome to attend. I think you'd find it worthwhile. Mr. Evans talked about the relationship and the respect they have for us. Well, that's because of our leader at the time was Bud Bishop, and said, we're going to the Main Street Conference. And that kind of started us on this path of where we need to go. The Government Conference is another big thing that we sponsor out of those funds that's very critical from a relationship standpoint. We're working on some things right now that the state will be coming in, and we're just doing some looking at maybe some potential opportunities down the road. But they're there, they know who we are, and that conference is critical of that. So that goes down to, we can get in the future, we want to, as opposed to just being a message center, we want to be more of a value-added chamber of commerce where we can bring value to our community and our small businesses. And so there's some coding things and different things that we're working on right now, but it does sometimes require some expenses from a standpoint. You ask somebody to come in, you don't buy them lunch, well, I don't think that's right. I think we need to entertain when they come and show us what kind of community we are. So that's the report on that. It changes by the year. For example, the tree this year and the budget that will go on along with the ornaments. It is a pre-lit tree, and those are things that we want to do each year. Now last year we did supply the year-end, and I can't remember her name, but we did pay for that concert. That was the last one we had of the year, and that was funded by the Chamber of Commerce as well.
Thank you, Mr. McDonald. Any questions for Mr. McDonald, a.k.a. Elvis?
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. McDonald, for the very thorough and in detailed report. One quick question I have about Main Street. What do you anticipate being a reasonable timeline for our community to work toward that? Is that a 1-year, 3-year type adventure?
Realistically, I mean, you do have to appoint, we do have a downtown revitalization committee headed by Mr. Ray Evans. That is a very strong committee, probably needs to have some additional members that could probably go right into being the downtown or the Main Street committee, potentially. You do have to have a director. It could be somebody that's part-time, it could be somebody that's full-time in the city, the chamber, or where else. But it is recommended to be a dedicated person that would focus on that. We have to apply for a 501c3. We have to become a nonprofit. We look at the Merchants Association. Some of that would go in potentially to be in the Main Street. But I would anticipate if we're not in Main Street by 2021, we've not done our responsibilities.
Excellent. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you, Elvis.
Motion to approve the budget that Ray presented.
Motion made by Vice Mayor Ken Dodson,
Second.
second by Alderman Chris Speck. Any discussion? Roll call vote, Ms. Phillips.
Alderman
Yes.
Alderman Strayer,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Dodson,
Yes.
Alderman Daniel,
Yes.
Alderman Cody,
Yes.
Alderman Richmond,
Yes.
motion passed.
Motion passed. Okay, item number 3, Mr. Ray Evans, Downtown Revitalization Committee, adding on some members, correct?
Recall, at your last meeting, you approved a bit of a restructuring of the Downtown Revitalization Committee to add 2 additional members, making a total of 9, with, I think, 3 of those being ex officio. And I think the mayor and the committee brings to you tonight 2 names, Ms. Julia Bishop and Ms. Jennifer Officer. One being a property owner within the district, the other being a business owner within the district, as the 2 additional members of the Downtown Revitalization Committee. And Mayor, I understand they both agreed to serve.
That's correct, Ray.
I make a motion to approve those to be added.
Motion made by Alderman Kelly Coleman. Is there a second? Second by Alderman Chris Speck. Any discussion? All for the motion, let know by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, like sign. Motion passed unanimously.
I do have one question for you, Mr. Evans. I've mentioned this to you before, but if this is something that the Downtown Revitalization Committee might spend a little time discussing, I would appreciate it. I would really like to see us implement some type of a signage ordinance around our square, in terms of consistency, what sizes are allowable, what materials should and shouldn't be used for signs. I think that you can sometimes have too many signs or not enough signs, and I'm sure that if you go to Main Street, there are very strict requirements, I'm not sure, but sometimes I think the quality of the signage can deter, or it can enhance a business, and I'm not sure if that receives any discussion, but it's something that I certainly notice and would like to have some, response on.
Kelly, as being a part of Main Street, there will be a business district ordinance that will go around. The city council will have to vote on. And we learned this in our Main Street meeting with 2 ladies from the state of last week. Okay. Currently, and they will go a little bit more lenient as far as signs concerns outside their business in the business district. And the business district is the same zone that we're talking about in our downtown revitalization.
That's right.
So, for instance, according to the folks that we talked with, if you wanted a sign right outside your business, you could have one. And there would be proper procedures and codes that you would have to follow. But it'd be just a little bit more lenient than what it is now. Currently, the codes that we have doesn't allow for off-premise signs, and that's been a problem that we have had over the years with the signs everywhere, so it's kind of being condensed. However, I anticipate, I hope that we are a Main Street community in the next 6 months. I hope. The application we'll start the process as soon as we get the application. So, the downtown business district will have some more lenient rules on signs, on if someone has a table and chair, if they have a restaurant they want to put outside on their sidewalk, if they want to have what I call a TP sign outside in front of the business, those things will be allowed in this downtown business district if the city council chooses to go that route.
Mayor, I would maybe use a slightly different term rather than lenient. I might use the term flexibility.
Okay.
Somewhat more flexible. As part of the process, we'll be preparing a set of design guidelines, design standards for development within the district, and those standards will be rather specific about signage, but as long as you comply with that, there's a lot of flexibility within that as to what the signage will look like.
Thank you. I'm not trying to point toward any specific business on the square, but I know there have been some of these TP
I call them
type
TP
signs,
signs.
sandwich boards, and sometimes they're put right in the middle of the sidewalk, potentially blocking, particularly handicap access. So I just didn't know if we had any type of ordinances that regulated that kind of thing.
Yeah, so, of course, we have to be careful with the sign on the sidewalks, given the fact that ADA, by rule, by law, we must be able to have an open sidewalk where two wheelchairs can pass. All right, item number 4, UCMC, Mr. Ben Winningham.
Mayor Hayes, Aldermen, ladies and gentlemen, I'm here tonight just to give an update on the LED lighting project for the town of Livingston. We have phases 1, 2, and 3 are complete, which is the majority of town. Right now, we're working on phase 4, which is Highway 85, excuse me, and West Main Street. Phase 5 will be the bypass. The reason we saved those for last is because we had to have a lighting study done to see what size light we needed there. We have that finished, the lights are in, all we need is a little time. So,
Thank you, Mr. Winningham. Is there any questions for Ben?
Ben, they look great, but I was coming up 85, coming in tonight, and it was dark, and I seen them working today out there this morning, and it makes a difference. on
Yes,
that
sir.
drive, so.
Highway 85, we're actually adding a couple of poles.
Oh, all right.
The lighting study recommended that we do that, so.
Well, it looks good, so.
I'd just like to say that, we've needed that for a long time. It's a better light, it's a different kind of light.
Yes, sir.
And, I just noticed down my streets and everything, I see all the way to the bottom of the hill now, and, it's fantastic. I'm glad to look at that.
Good deal.
Yeah, Ben, only question I have is on West Main there in front of the Huddle House area, there's some lights that was cut off.
That's correct.
Are we gonna get those back on?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yes, that's in this phase 4.
Okay, thank you, Ben. Any other questions for Ben?
Just one more comment, on the lights on 85, there's several that rides bicycles down to there, and they ride them after dark, or real early morning, 2 or 4 o'clock in the morning, I happen to be out and see them, and that's gonna make a big difference, so they work.
It's always the other difference.
Are you able to provide a guesstimate on when final completion is, or is that just?
No, sir. No, right now, we're into the weather factor. I wish I could, but
No problem.
it is priority 1, I promise that.
Well, not only does it look great, and I think Cohen's doing a great job, but I think it's also very important to point out that the city could potentially save about $50,000 a year in electric expenses by going to this new technology. And I just thank our committee for being willing and open-minded to do something different and to take advantage of new technologies. And I think there's additional opportunities that we should explore to continue to try to bring our total electric expenses down annually.
Absolutely.
Thank you, Mr. Winningham.
Y'all have a great night.
You too.
Item number 5 is appoint Mr. Bill Fletcher to replace Roger Rubel on the Alcohol Beverage Control Board. Mr. Rubel has said he's been there long enough, just wanted to let someone else do it for a little while. Talked to Mr. Fletcher, he's agreed to do it.
Motion approved.
Second.
Motion made by Vice Mayor Ken Dodson, second by Kelly Coleman. Any discussion? All for the motion, let it know by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, like sign. Motion passed. Item number 6, amendments to the Property Maintenance Advisory Board. Mr. Kelly Coleman.
Yes, sir, Mayor, thank you for recognizing me. I want to present the few changes that have been made to the advisory board's, I guess, guidelines, rules. And in the packet, you've included a copy of the existing, or the existing, and then the proposed. And if you notice, there's just a few tweaks in the opening paragraph, and then I think one of the main things that they felt like they needed to change was that if in fact our codes administrator, Kristen, was unable to be at a meeting, that they needed to reschedule. They don't need a meeting if he can't be here. And then in number 6, they felt that, and I believe this was precipitated from the chair, the vice chair meeting with you and going over some things that, like anything new, that may need to receive a few tweaks. So in number 6, they asked to add, to be able to have the authority to ask additional detailed questions, and then in number 7, excuse me, they wanted the flexibility to ask open questions to the inspector as well. So I'm pleased to carry this on their behalf.
Thank you, Alderman Coleman. Is there any questions? If no questions, need a motion to pass this amendment.
So moved.
Motion made by Alderman Chris Speck. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Vice Mayor Ken Dodson. Any discussion? All for the motion, let it know by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, like sign.
No.
No.
For the motion, 2 against the motion. Motion passed. Item number 7, SRO grant, Chief Greg Etheridge.
Thank y'all. I've got the Director of Schools and Ms. Patty Dale with me here tonight. Patty and I, Director Winningham, we've worked on obtaining additional school resource officers. We worked on this for about a year.
Yes, sir.
The state awarded the school system a grant totaling $87,500, where we would station an officer at A.H. Roberts and for Reach Academy. So, in addition to a salary, we would also fund equipment, which is very unusual. So, $25,000 worth of equipment for the officers, and roughly $65,000 for salaries. So it's like some of these other grants that you get in the past, 95%. Certainly through the end of this budget year, it would not affect our budget at all. And I'm asking to move forward with the contract with the school system to go ahead and hire 2 officers for those positions.
Any questions for the chief?
You guys got complete support from Mark and Patty and school system, Greg, you know, everything works good. I mean, and that'll put one in, I think I may ask you.
We'll have it in
school.
every school.
Okay.
We've been doing some double duties for several years now. All the county schools have SROs, and I was an SRO in 97, 98. It's a great opportunity for us.
Just to clarify, you're gonna have an SRO at every school? Okay.
For the police department, that would cover Livingston Academy, Livingston Middle, if you all approve this, A.H. Roberts, and Reach Academy. And then the sheriff's department covers the schools outside of that jurisdiction. Yes, sir.
So this 87,000 that goes to the city, that's to fund
We
the
would-
city portion?
Yes, sir.
Right.
We would submit invoices to the school system would reimburse it. Much like we already have the program we've had for years, certainly the 10 plus that I've been here, where the school system reimburses us $5,000 a year for the other two.
But we have SRO officers at LA and at LMS currently,
Yes, sir.
and you're billing the school system for that.
Correct.
So you already have those two officers.
Correct.
So you need two additional officers, one for region, one for AH.
Yes, sir.
And then, okay, copy, thanks.
Will this grant money cover their salary completely?
It should. Certainly through this budget year.
Will those officers have to go through the academy?
There is money built in here depending upon, it's kind of needing approval to move forward. We've got some people we want to interview. We may transfer someone internally. The goal would be to make sure that when we do that, that those monies are going to be within that $65,000 range, which is in the range of where we're at now.
But we lost two seasoned officers in the last quarter, I believe, to
Yes, sir.
Putnam County schools to become SRO officers, correct?
One actually took an SRO at Putnam, and one decided that was probably not for him and went to Galveston. So, yes, we lost two.
Any potential that you might be able to lure that one back that went to Putnam County, that's already trained and already been through the academy?
It's a possibility. I wouldn't have any problem at all reaching out to guys.
Okay, I'll entertain a motion.
Make a motion.
Motion made by Alderman Rex Dale,
Second.
second by Alderman David Langford. Any discussion?
No, I compliment Greg and the school system both, because I think it's needed. We haven't had nothing here yet, but folks, we have faced, it could happen any day.
Yes, sir.
And so this way, hopefully we got it covered.
We've been very blessed. We have a very strong working relationship with the school system. We work. It's not uncommon for me and Mark to talk 10 o'clock at night.
All right, there's a motion and a second on the floor. Any more discussion? All in favor of the motion, let it know by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, like sign. Motion passed. Item number 9, part-time dispatcher to full-time, Chief Greg Etheridge.
As y'all might recall, back when, beginning of the year, really around December, I had came before you all and had moved some money, and we said we're gonna cut one position, and we did this and that and the other to come up with the funds for the officers. Part of that proposal that I made was, at that time, we had an open dispatcher position, and I said, let's make it part-time, it can save us money, and I believe I can get the time for the regular dispatchers taken care of. It has not worked. It's the way we've had to do the part-time and some of the people that we've been able to bring in, it's just not working at all. And I don't think in the long run it is a good strategy to continue with it. When, as you were talking about, when Sergeant Billings and Sergeant Story left, that left us about an $8,000 gap between those salaries and the people we replaced them with. So when I did the dispatch part, I pulled 10,000 out, and I basically asked them to have that 10,000 to come back to me. And I have someone that has been working with us some. She comes with recommendation of the dispatch supervisors and the officers. And so what I'm wanting to do is basically get some of that funding back. I don't like having to ask that, but I think it's the best thing for us to do. The overall budget will not be affected. Mayor and I went over a bunch of numbers several times. I believe that when we get to the end of the year, we'll have some surplus.
Took it several times, but I think we might.
The $8,000 covers the price for being part-time going full-time, right?
Well, it would actually be 10 if you look at it straight on the books as an annual thing, you know, like for 12 months. When the other two officers left, we replaced them back. It was $8,000 difference as far as that part went. The hard part and Rocky knows this from emergency services side, the vacation, which everybody is, the city's very generous to us, and then we have vacation days and holidays and personal days. It's very hard to deal with that. And so I want the officers to be able to get as much time as they possibly can. It's allotted to them, but with the programming for the part-time work in terms of holding kind of comp time where it was, but the issue was trying to get those days down, and it's not from a lack of effort. So that's why I'm asking that part first.
But in summary, you're saying your department's budget overall for the year will remain at what it was or less?
Yes, sir. I'm confident of that.
And so bringing this person to full-time, how many then dispatchers will you have full-time?
There will be a total of 5.
5.
Yes, sir. One of which is a certified officer. When I did the part-time thing, it didn't allow me to use him on the road the way I like when I need to. So it's kind of a double hard thing. That makes sense.
Make a motion that, we move on from part-time to full-time dispatch.
I'll second that.
Motion made by Alderman Langford, second by Alderman Dishman. Any discussion?
Greg, will she have to go to TBI?
Yes, sir.
Education?
And
That's not the issue.
This is discussion. Go ahead.
Yeah, I have a comment. With all due respect, you know how I feel about this.
yes, sir.
I do think it's important, perhaps sometime in the next quarter, to come before this body and explain your rationale for maintaining dispatch in-house. Because everybody that lives in Oakland County pays $1.08 a month for existing 911 dispatch. So I think that would be good to put on record.
Yes, sir.
All right, we have a motion and second on the floor. All for the motion, let it know by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, like sign. Motion passed.
Um,
Thank you, Chief.
The only other question is, may I hire Ms. Chelsea?
Yes, sir.
Motion made by
Yes.
Alderman Dishman,
Second.
second by Alderman Langford.
Excuse me, I'm about to cover the motion.
Any discussion? All for the motion, let it know by saying aye. All opposed, like sign. Motion passed. Welcome aboard.
Yeah.
All right, item number 9, Mr. Charlie Smith, barge, Wayne, Sumner County, or the barge design.
Yes, sir. Yeah, it used to be Bart Weber Summer. Thank you, Mayor and Council, for letting us come and speak with you again about the Dillon Pond flood mitigation work that we've been doing. The mayor and the council's probably aware that we wrapped up the study that we were asked to do probably a couple months ago and submitted a report. And since then, there's been some additional questions that have come up, so we've been working with the city to try to help answer the rest of those questions. Tonight I was asked to come and just kind of give a summary of sort of everything that we learned before and after we did the work. We did some of this was based on engineering study and modeling, some of it was based on just observations that those people made in the field, and some of it anecdotal information, but as a group we've landed on some recommendations. What we represented in the report a couple months ago is still critical information. The initial thing that we were asked to do was to give some engineering recommendation on what would represent flood risk mitigation or protection against what would be a typical design storm, which is a 100-year design storm. If you recall, the event that happened last February wasn't anywhere near a 100-year event. It wasn't even quite a 10-year event, but certainly caused significant problems in the city. So what the engineering analysis comes up with is that you would need a 30-inch pipe going from the pond down to Town Creek. And in addition to that, you would need some upstream storage of some 100 acre-feet upstream of the pond. And the best guess as far as a opinion of cost for actually constructing all of that would be somewhere in the neighborhood of $8.5 million. A lot of money. So what else can be done to mitigate the flood risk? So what else can be done is property buyouts of the properties that are prone to flooding, which would then become green spaces and allowed to flood. So there is funding available potentially for those buyouts. We've talked about that, and it's detailed in the report. So as far as flood risk mitigation, those are the things that can be effective in mitigating flood risk. Okay, the very expensive storage and pipe, and or buying out properties that are prone to flooding. So is there any questions about that, as far as what it would take to actually mitigate flood risk? Okay, so just very briefly, some of the funding options that are out there is potential TEMA funding if you were going to try to tackle a $8 million project, but that seems like that's probably not a practical thing to do at this point. There's also funding potentially from the Corps of Engineers that could also potentially participate in that kind of activity and or for property buyouts. And then the third one is that TEMA has funding available potentially for property buyouts as well. And I know that the mayor has been working for a while now with TEMA and Overton County to move that option forward. Not that a decision has been made, but trying to get all the ducks in a row so that people could understand what that would look like. So Mayor, I don't want to speak for you too far in that regard, but.
Yeah, continue on.
Oh, sure.
I left my notes on my desk.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay. All right. So we can come back to that one.
Yeah, please.
Okay, so then, as far as the flood mitigation, flood risk mitigation, those are what your options lay out as currently. So the other question that has come up significantly is about the existing standpipe or injection well that's in Dillon Pond, and then the secondary sinkhole that has opened up behind that injection well at some point in the intervening years since the decades since that standpipe was put. So, meeting with TDEC and looking back through their information, we talked about this a month or two ago here, it doesn't appear that injection well was ever permitted when it was built. If it was, they don't have that record. So it's important that that work be permitted. And then, so the city has asked that we go through the process with TDEC to get that permit, and that process is well underway. We've been working with them, and the application should be final here probably this week. And anticipate it'll take maybe a month or so, to get any comments back and finalize that process. But having met with TDEC, they indicated they didn't see any real issues with it. Yes, sir.
So, thank you, Rebecca, for getting my notes that I left on the desk earlier. We have been working with Tina and Ms. Gary Cochran. So first, our hazard mitigation plan has got to be approved by FEMA. And the county is in the process of doing that. In fact, we had a meeting here at City Hall with Overton and Pickett counties on the hazard mitigation plan. So we hope that by December the 12th, according to Chris Massingill, we'll be able to move forward with that. So the mitigation grant program provides a process for local government through the state to apply for federal funds for mitigation assistance to acquire interest in property, including the purchase of structures in the floodplain, to demolish and or remove the structures, and to maintain the use of the property as open space. The following conditions and restrictions shall apply. The property can be used for parks, for outdoor recreation activities, wetland management, nature reserves, cultivation, grazing, camping, etc. A public facility that is open on all sides and functional related to designated open space of recreational use. Public rest rooms, structure that is compatible with open space and conserves the natural function of a floodplain. The use of the property must stay in compliance with the terms are inspected by FEMA, and a report for local government must be completed every 3 years. FEMA representative informed us that this would be a 75% federal grant, 12% state, and 12.5% state, and 12.5 local shares. That's in the event that the city wanted to buy the property, all the property that would be in the plan, or the properties that have been damaged. The county hazard mitigation must be complete before we can apply for the grant. So we can have this discussion, but we can't have this discussion simply because the plan has not been updated and has not been complete thus far. Again, after December 12th, we think it will be. At that time, we think we will have TEMA or FEMA to come up and have a work session with the council to see if that is a route that they may want to go, and with the property owners. Again, that cannot happen until after December 12th. And I think you talked about the aquatic resource alteration permit, the ARAP permit.
Sir, the permit is referred to as an underground injection control permit. Yeah, with TDEC. So, yeah, that permit now is about, it had nothing to do with the buyouts.
Right.
It's all about it's all about the injection of what exists now.
I'll be happy to answer any questions about TEMA and FEMA on the buyout program. You know, I wanted them to come tonight, but given the fact that we didn't have our hazard mitigation plan, the conversation is just null and void, really. But after that, I feel like they have come, so.
Just one clarification,
Okay.
Mayor, wouldn't that only apply to property owners who would have an interest in participating?
Oh, sure.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Not, it wouldn't be an all or nothing?
No.
Yeah,
No,
all right.
absolutely. Carry on, thank you.
Yes, sir. So, regarding the injection well or the standpipe that's there now and the secondary sinkhole that's formed behind it, there's been a lot of questions about what was the intent, what's it actually doing, should anything be done with it. So the first issue, as far as why is it there, we weren't part of that. I don't think anybody that's here was part of that, but it appears that, and I think we talked about this last time, it appears that the intent of it was to, in part, keep the pond at some basic minimum level so that it would function as an amenity and as a pond. And it appears that that was part of the intent. The typical use for an injection well also includes trying to protect the throat of a sinkhole so that it remains functional. So I don't know exactly what the intents were, but that's my guess as to why it was there in the first place. So based on the current condition, you know, however many decades later, it is still functioning as a injection point for water to be able to pass into the underground system. It does not appear that it is still functional as far as maintaining any minimum level in the pond. The reason is because there's a concrete collar around the pipe, and the best information that we have, and I think Wayne has observed this on several occasions, I don't want to speak for him, but you mentioned it, that water intrudes underneath that collar. So even though it may have been intended to hold water at a certain point, it doesn't appear that it's actually doing that anymore. So in terms of what should you do with the standpipe, if you weren't going to try to protect it, to make sure that it stays open as a throat, which would be a typical use of an injection well, then you can do nothing with it, and it doesn't appear that it is going to have any impact on the level of the pond, one way or the other, up or down, other than as it would normally function as a sinkhole opening. So you don't have to do anything with it other than you need to permit it, and that process is underway. As far as the secondary sinkhole, That one is on the shore side, it's not in the pond. There may be others as well, but the two that we've observed are the standpipe and the secondary sinkhole. That secondary one is considerably lower than the top of the standpipe. It's a good, just by eyeing it, it's a good 6 or 8 feet below the top of the standpipe. So at any point when there's significant water in the pond, if that secondary sinkhole is functional, it's the one that's controlling the depth of water more than the standpipe is. Now there is a bit of shoreline between the standpipe and the secondary sinkhole that is a little bit of a dam, but again, even that area is lower than the top of the standpipe. So water can get to the secondary sinkhole regardless of what's happening with the standpipe. Okay, so I know that was a lot. What questions do you have about that?
So there wouldn't be no sense in core drilling that standpipe to see what's in it or what ain't in it, right?
The standpipe
Right.
itself?
Yeah, if you wanted to core drill it to see if it's loaded with concrete or bentonite, that, you're saying it wouldn't matter if it
You
is
can
or
see
it isn't?
right down the inside of it,
When you look at it, it's got gravel.
down the bottom.
Right, and of course you could have capped it with gravel and still loaded it with whatever you wanted to load it with.
But there's water that comes in there, and there's water that comes into the secondary
So,
sinkhole.
did you dye it?
No, that wasn't part of what
Right.
we were trying to ascertain.
Could you dye it?
Well, you could put dye in it, I have no idea where it's gonna come out.
Well, right, but that's the whole reason to dye it, to see where it does come out.
And again, those are reasonable questions, that
Sure.
wasn't part of what we were asking.
Okay. But if you were asked to do it, you could do it, right?
Charlie, hey,
We would get somebody to do it.
Right.
Yeah.
is there, the council have any questions for Mr. Charlie Smith?
I have a couple more comments, but I
Okay.
want to make sure and offer opportunity.
Yeah, I'm sorry, continue. Thank you.
Just for the benefit of one of our business owners in the area that I don't think was here to hear your first part, could you just restate what you said about the fact that you did not find that it appears that the existing standpipe is affecting the level?
No, it does not appear that that existing standpipe is having any impact one way or another on the level of the pond because of the infiltration that's happening outside of the actual pipe itself and the secondary sinkhole that's behind it. So it may have been intended to hold the pond at a level, but over the years that ability is gone and it's not controlling the height of the pond.
And you also stated, I think previously, that because the top elevation of the existing standpipe is, let's say at X, and the elevation of the businesses around the pond are higher than the top elevation of that standpipe. If the standpipe were functioning sufficiently to drain the pond, then we wouldn't have had the flooding, unless it had been a 30-inch standpipe, correct?
Well, the flood that happened in February, the anecdotal information we have is that there was also issues with water coming up through the floor at the high school. Okay, so the presumption is that the water table was up significantly. So if those things are true, it doesn't make any difference what size the sinkhole is, there wasn't any more water that was going to go down into it. So the pipe size or the standpipe elevation doesn't appear that it would have had any impact as far as the February event because the water table was apparently up such that no water was going into the sinkhole.
Right. So just to clarify, you also said that the secondary sinkhole, in your professional opinion, is more of a controller of the level of the pond than the existing standpipe.
Simply because it's considerably lower, okay? But that secondary sinkhole opened apparently on its own at some point over the years, and there's no way to guess what the changes are gonna be over time. It opened on its own. So other sinkholes could form, that one could enlarge. We've talked about this a few times from early on. We don't know what's gonna happen with sinkholes, but the more water that goes through them, the more they tend to change. But what those changes are, I can't predict. Yeah. Okay, so the existing standpipe, the intention, as far as I understand, is to permit it in place, and then, based on all the discussions that we've had, it appears the appropriate thing to do is to just let the thing function however it's gonna function, understanding that currently it doesn't appear to have any impact on the level of the pond. One of the things that's been done over the years is that little bit of bank, there's a few sandbags there trying to protect that little bit of bank to keep more water from going into the secondary sinkhole. So what we discussed with TDEC was if the city wants to take those sandbags out, and then just let nature take its course as far as whatever the level of the pond wants to be, or does that secondary sinkhole potentially pass more water because there's nothing artificially holding it back. TDEC doesn't have any issue with that. So that's what we recommend that you do, is just get the thing permitted, and if you don't want to spend a bunch of money trying to preserve the secondary throat or close the secondary throat or do a bunch of maintenance on the existing one, then just, let it function how it's gonna function without spending money on it.
Is there any questions from the council? So I think the engineer has done his recommendations. Any questions for Mr. Howard? Is there any action that needs to be took place in his recommendation?
Well, Mr. Mayor, I believe that we should take whatever action we need to do what he recommends we do. I mean, does that need to be a motion?
I think so.
Take that action, well, then I'll make that into a motion to remove the existing sandbags, as you indicated, and let nature take its course. And if that secondary sinkhole, if the water goes in that sinkhole and the pond drains, then nature's taking its course. That's what I suggest we do, based on the recommendation.
All right, there's a motion by Alderman Coleman. Is there a second?
I'll second that we follow the recommendation forward.
Second by Vice Mayor Ken Dodson. Any discussion? All for the motion, let it know by saying aye. All opposed, like sign. Motion passed. Thank you, Mr. Charles Smith.
Sir, there's one more thing I'd like to address, because there's been so many questions. Significant question about, even from the very beginning, about what happened, why was it flooded in February? And the answer is because there's not enough flood storage. Okay. So there's many apparent causes for why there's not enough flood storage. The simplest answer is that every time anything has been developed that added any dirt into that whole basin, 1,400 acres worth of basin, that has taken away flood storage. In addition to any of the hard surfaces that have been constructed. So all the houses, all the roads, all the driveways, all the businesses, and all of the times that things were filled in, to make a parking lot, or I know that there's been numerous other sinkholes that were filled in. So all of these things have contributed to, what happened in February. And I'll just mention that we would recommend to you that you consider adopting some stormwater ordinance for development, so that you can have some more intentional control moving forward when development happens, so that you can, protect from future risk, in other areas. And I know there's a lot of areas around town that have had, challenges of various types, but as you continue to grow and make improvements, if you don't have a flood ordinance, a stormwater ordinance, for development, you're probably gonna see things like this continue to grow on you. So we would recommend that you take a good look at that.
The ordinance, we've talked about the stormwater ordinance before it passed. And I think we had, was there a plan already presented to city council back some time ago? You recall, Charlie?
No, when we put together a ordinance, probably, I don't know, man, was that 4 or 5 years ago? And I don't believe that ever came to city council. I think that was only with the planning commission, but I don't think it ever made it to the city council.
Is it possible that a stormwater plan specific for development is a separate ordinance than a standard stormwater ordinance plan? Are those two different things?
Well, it can be, yeah. I mean, typically you have a subdivision plan that you already have. There isn't, unless something's happened in the last 4 or 5 years, there isn't one that governs any kind of development.
That's what I'm.
Yeah.
I mean, we may have a stormwater plan, but it may not cover development.
Right. Is that something this council would like, for the board design group to take a look at?
Based on his recommendation.
Yeah, based on his recommendation. We'll make that before the motion.
I will.
I mean, the point is, you can't just go around town and start filling up every low part of town and it not have an effect on your neighbor. And that's what we have.
That's right.
To the left of Highway 52 is a significant storage area that has been built in, that was never regulated. So unless we regulate things like this, it's gonna continue to get worse. Burger King, another example.
Oh, and I agree, and this is their business, they can do it, come back to us to explain it, let us adopt it or make this resolution, whatever. I'm thinking of an example, and we're lucky that it don't, but over on, Zachary Street, when it floods, Greg and them has to block it off. If it floods good enough, we can't access A.H. Roberts but one side, at times. So this thing would need to be done and would be an asset to do.
Are you making a motion, Ron, to do that?
Yes, sir, I will.
Motion made by Alderman Dishman, to hire Barge to do a stormwater ordinance and come back and advise us. There's a motion on the floor. Is there a second?
A second.
Second by Alderman Reddsdale. Any discussion? All for the motion, let know by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, like sign. Motion passed.
Wait, I have one more question, Charlie. So you're talking about the water table being so high that there's just nowhere for it to go. If we open up the second hole and it still doesn't lower the pond, would a pipe run to Town Creek be our next best option to prevent a flood again?
The sinkholes or the injection well being improved or open or even additional sinkholes that formed, if the water table was high and that's what was preventing the water from coming down, it doesn't matter what you do with the standpipes or the sinkhole, it would not have prevented the February event. The only way that you would have prevented the February event is the pipe and the additional storage.
And I was asked also, about an embankment that would kind of be in a levee, put an embankment all the way around the pond to hold more water. Would that work? I mean,
theoretically, you could try to build up more storage there. Yeah,
Probably
you'd have to understand more about where that, so there's a road that comes around the north side.
right.
And then as it comes over by the high school, you'd have to look at the topography and see, does that make sense? But you could add storage that way. Yeah.
Thank you. Anything else?
One more comment. The reason why, just real brief, I made that motion to do that is, I know it's expense to the city and taxpayer, whatever, but this can eliminate future
Sure.
flooding to businesses, residential developments, or whatever. We've seen what it's done to the business owners that are here tonight, you know, so, you know, it's money that we can use maybe to benefit and eliminate this in the future.
Yeah.
So that's why I'm gonna explain why I went
Yeah.
to spend money.
Sure. Thank you, Alderman Dishman. Thank you, Mr. Troy Smith. Thank you.
Thanks, sir.
All right. Item number 10, Mr. John Meadows has got some amendments. Yeah, I think I handed them out already, John.
One last edit.
I might tell you like I do Ray Evans, you got to get yourself in a little early. Sue Beveridge had that issue too. Did you get one first? Go ahead, John.
Mayor, Board of Aldermen, what I presented you is an ordinance to make a amendment to our existing alcohol code that's set forth in Title 8 of the Livingston Municipal Code. Some time ago, we updated our ordinances whenever we had the passage of the retail package stores. That also included some amendments that was made to the city's beer code. There's an error in that concerning the sale of beer. And what this does is, this is an ordinance that amends subsection 2 of section 8-211 of chapter 2 of title 8, that prohibits the sale of beer between the hours of 3 a.m. and 8 a.m. Monday through Saturday, and between the hours of 3 a.m. and 10 a.m. on Sundays. The ordinance that was passed had the hours 12 a.m. to 8 a.m. It should be 3 a.m. to 8 a.m. And so, in the basis of this is there's a statute that the legislature has passed that states that once the city adopts the liquor by the drink referendum, that the rules and regulations of the Tennessee Alcohol Beverage Commission applies to the sale of beer as well. So the city does not have any authority to regulate the hours for liquor by the drink. We have limited authority to regulate beer, with the exception of when we pass liquor by the drink. Then those beer sale rules will be in congruence with state rules. And that's what this ordinance does. It corrects that error in the prior ordinance concerning the hours for the sale of beer within the city limits.
Thank you, John. Any questions for John? Mr. Meadows? If not, I need a motion to pass this amendment to the ordinance to correct what we had as a mistake, I think.
Motion to approve the correction.
Motion made by Alderman Dishman. Dodson, excuse me. Is there a second? Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Alderman Coleman. Any discussion?
We're just more or less correcting your amendment to what the state recommends, is that
That's right.
correct?
Well, we're correcting it what it's supposed to be in compliance with state law.
So this is going to comply with state law.
Yes.
Okay, we have a motion,
Yes.
motion and a second on the floor. Any more discussion? All for the motion, let it know by saying aye. Aye. All opposed, like sign, motion passed.
And I said nay or no.
Okay. 5, 4, 1 opposed. Ms. Phillips. Item number 11, Mr. David Langford, Bibber Street intersection.
There's a lady contacted me the other day and said that she had been behind a out-of-state vehicle.
Can you push his button? There.
And, they was pulling out there at Walgreens, and I was kind of confused because the striping and everything was wore off. And I know that we was gonna do some striping up around the hospital, so I was just gonna see maybe if we might get an estimate on that, do it all the same or something.
Yeah, I think we can, Dave, yeah. So while we're talking about paving, so we have spent, if you remember on the paving, we borrowed $500,000, $500,000 to pave some streets. We spent $521,935.68 as a grand total. The preparation for the streets costs $60,712.68, and the paving was $403,223,000 for a total of $463,935.68. So we're under the 500,000. However, the other streets that was broken up and disturbed by water, it was paid for out of the water fund. That'd be partials of 7th Street, Woodland, and Bibber Street at a cost of $58,000. So we was under the budget of the 500,000 due to bad and massive water leaks at Bibber, Woodland, and 7th. We was able to pay for that out of the funds and has a little extra. So I say all that, David, some of the, we have just a little extra money, not much, and so we can probably get the things striped as the hospital recommended on Oak.
I don't have a clue what it costs.
On First Street. And then on the other, maybe on Bidford, so we'll take a look at it.
I just don't want to bring it.
Okay. Also, the Veterans Day program is November 11th, 10 o'clock on the square. They'd like for the Board of Aldermen and County Commissioners to serve the veterans at their meal following the ceremony at the Joel L. Evans Community Center, 10:30 to 11:30. The program will start at 10. So anyone that would like to help serve the meals at the Joel L. Evans Center is welcome to the thing. No other business from the Board of Aldermen. Go ahead.
Mr. Mayor, I received an email, and then I believe a subsequent email was sent to you from Jared Garrett regarding his concern regarding speeding and heavy truck traffic on the square. And this is what he sent me. If you want to address that, I think we need to follow on.
Dear Mayor and Alderman, I'm writing about the increased use of heavy truck traffic on East Main Street. This should be cause for concern for all business owners and citizens that regularly frequent the post office and town square. Semi-trucks have no business going through town when a bypass is available. The speed of the trucks and the jake brake noise has gotten noticeably worse over the last year. I trust that you will provide a safe environment for our business shops and eateries around the square and through town. Regards, Jared Garrett, 420 East Main Street. So, I have passed this on to the Chief of Police. Greg, you got any comment on this?
You can't stop the semi. We can't stop semis coming through, it's a state highway. However, we can write tickets. We prefer not to have to write tickets if we don't have to, but I agree that there's been complaints. We slowed a lot of the traffic down with the traffic light when we were coming across the square when we left one on blue and one was on the timer, and that's helped a lot. I think where he's at, I guess they're speeding back up between First National and Union and coming down into where the triangle is. So
That seems to be the concern on the letter. So what you're saying to, you'll continue to enforce speeding
yes,
across the square?
yes, sir.
I think he was referring in front of the post office. Yeah, his complaint was the speeding trucks in front of the post office going east.
Anything else for the chief? Okay, no other business, have a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Motion made, Kelly Coleman, is there a second? Second, Vice Mayor Ken Dodson. All for the motion, let know, saying aye. All opposed, like sign, we're adjourned.